And so if you miss something, we'll get that posted on the HMSC past seminar page in a few days. But now logistics are all done for today. I just wanted to welcome Laura Ireland. She is the director of the Lincoln County Animal Shelter. And she's here to talk to us about how to prepare to care for your pets after disaster. And we've been trying for like a year to make this all work. And due to pandemic and other logistics, it just hasn't come together. So today we are so excited to have Laura. Laura, if you want to take it away, this stage is yours.
Sure. Thanks for joining us today. Cinnamon and some others from Hatfield had reached out, kind of hoping that we could chat about ways to prepare for pets and disasters. And I'll talk about it on an individual that you guys over there are going to be in a spot where people will be leaving and evacuating in case of disaster, and think about ways that as a community, how do we prepare when people are evacuating with their pets? Because the reality is where people are going to show up, their pets are going to be there too. And we were able to learn a lot from the Otis fires, and so also kind of wanted to share some ideas and things that we came across during the wildfires. So just a little bit of background on animal services. I'm actually a recovering attorney, and so a lot of my background was in animal law, environmental law, but also really had an interest in caring for animals in disasters, and with some animal response training, and through Oregon Humane Society Technical Animal Rescue Team, and HSUS was a responder to Hurricane Katrina. And so that experience really kind of led me into wanting to get more involved with animal services, animal sheltering, and animal disaster and response. So the animal shelter is part of the sheriff's office, and so is emergency management. We work very closely together to help make sure that animals are included in our disaster planning and response, and we really saw the great partnership that we had, again, in the Otis area, being able to work so closely together, have animal services kind of behind all the evacuation lines, being able to assist in that way. So there's only 6 of us at the animal shelter, and then there's 3 animal services deputies in the patrol office. And we've all been trained in animal response, doing FEMA trainings. We've been working with CERT, and we have all sorts of stashes of panels, animal supplies. We can get food really easily. Kind of anything that we need. We want to be the kind of the first response as we can, but also understanding that we have a really big community, very spread out, and kind of depending on the disaster, really depends on our ability to help respond. Are you not able to hear me? See if somebody doesn't have audio.
We can hear. I'm working on getting them set up here. So Jill, they can't hear.
Oh, okay.
Send them a way to call in.
Okay, great. Okay. Really what we see a lot of our role too is doing presentations like this or outreach like this, because it's really going to take everyone in our community to be ready in times of need in any sort of disaster, because we're not going to be able to be there for everyone. And so really planning and knowing that this is going to be part of our community, and getting everybody on the same page in terms of what needs to be done is a lot of what we think is really important. So, of course, as we've seen, we have wildfires facing our community. We had been talking a lot about earthquake and tsunamis, and that's obviously still a risk that is out there for us, and a lot of times, flooding and landslides. And what I think is unique in our community, I think with any of these things in terms of, and I will be talking a little bit about go kits and those sorts of things, there's lots of information on the internet about ways you can plan for pets on a community level or even on an individual level. But I think it's really good to remember that there are some really unique challenges that kind of face our community and things that we need to think about when we're planning and realizing what we're going to be able to do for our animals. Part of those are, very few highways and access roads. As you imagine, and bridges go out, in terms of anybody being able to respond and get places to communicate, all of these things of, we have a lot of MOUs with different state and national organizations that are able to come in to assist. But, in the event of a statewide or, regional disaster, what's really the likelihood of them coming to assist us? And we, again, saw that in the Otis fires, and some other, kind of smaller populations that were really battling wildfires on their own just because there aren't resources for everyone. So hopefully as a community, we're going to be able to band together to be able to help each other, because that with all of these things that are facing us, we're going to be there for each other. And we've been able to do some predictions in terms of, based on the number of people we have, how many dogs and cats are in our community, given different, different disasters, how many people usually respond and need sheltering. Have seen is that in addition to, of course, dogs and cats and horses, kind of your other, even responding in the Otis area, we were assisting with rabbits, pigeons, llamas, peacocks, turkeys, ducks, koi fish, macaws. So, and everybody who has these animals, they care about them, and we want to make sure that they get out safely as much as possible, and then also be able to assist them in the rescue, hopefully in reunification with their families. And, I think a lot of people really feel like they would never leave their animals behind. But the reality is there are going to be times when, you might not be home. Again, you can be like at work or in the valley. We just never know when these things happen. And so kind of trying to think through, okay, what would happen if, what would I do if this happened in the middle of the night? What would happen if I was at work? What would happen? So again, the whole community thing of having neighbors, people around that know what to do with your pets in the event that you're not home, being able to have all of that communication of what to do is really important. And the reality is too, sometimes, wildfires, they happen really fast. And so you might have a minute to get out of your house. And so what situations is something really important to think about. And so a lot of this comes down to practicing. I think that's something that we don't do enough. And I think especially with something like, your cat and carriers, if the only time they go into carrier is when they go to the vet, it's going to be really hard to get them into a carrier in a time of an emergency. Again, go kits, kind of, it's now in our vernacular to make sure we have go kits, and thinking of all the, animals and people in your household, making sure you have food, water, shelter, medications for everyone. And a good kind of practice is having 2 or 3 bags of pet food on hand and always having that supply and rotating through it that way. So you always have kind of what you need in terms of your pet food, a good stock of that. You really want to think about your sheltering options. If there's something regional like a flood, you certainly could find a pet-friendly hotel to go to. In the event of a wildfire, parts of our community that are impacted and the parts that are still available, having pet-friendly hotels and friends or family that you can stay with is really important. But also know in the case of, major disaster with your pets in a tent in your yard or whatnot, if there's big enough earthquake, are there in terms of, even if there's a Red Cross shelter that's set up eventually, their protocols are not to allow animals unless they're service animals. But what we also saw in the Otis fire is that when it came down to it, they did let pets inside. But just be prepared for that. And a lot of what will go very far in helping your animals in this situation is being socialized with other people, being socialized as much as possible with other animals. Just no longer at shelter, or even staying with friends or family, kind of knowing your animal's behavior and what are things that you can do to help make them be, or allow them to be, and help them be more social, and those sorts of things. But again, the reality is there's going to be more animals in more places, more people in one place, and it's going to be stressful for everyone. So those are, just kind of some tips and ideas to think about as you're like, okay, how am I going to evacuate with your whole family and what that means. Super important is to have ID on your animals, microchip and tags. What we also saw a lot after Hurricane Katrina and a lot of these major disasters is animals that are left behind into emergency shelters and then transferred and adopted if there's no way to kind of reunite them through a microchip. So if you have your animals and they are microchipped, make sure that registration is up to date. And if you don't know how to do that, you can talk to your vet or actually come by the animal shelter. We can scan the microchip, let you know what company it is, make sure they can help you make sure that that is up to date with current registration. With all of your information in terms of email is great to have on there too, because most people don't change their emails often as they do as moving and then possibly with your phone number. Now that you can keep your cell phone number, that's more to have an emergency contact that is in the area, just because if you get in a car crash or something, it's great to be able to contact somebody locally. And it's also great to have a friend or family member that is far away. So in the event of a disaster here, we might be able to find your family in South Dakota or whatnot that can help reunite you with your pet. Always good to have updated vaccinations to keep your animals healthy. And again, in the case of a disaster, lots of animals are going to be together, helping to help prevent disease transmission between people and pets and amongst pets, having them up to date on vaccinations is really important, and having that information having a laminated, updated vaccination information and information about your pet's diet, their behavior and things like that, laminated and taped onto the carrier is awesome. The more information that people have who may be coming across your pets, the better. It just is helpful for those of us who may be caring for them. Of course, making sure you have carriers and leashes, and think about the immediate and also long term. So what we saw, especially with the cats who we helped evacuate and care for, and as people were evacuating with their cats on foot and in their cars, is a lot of us have just the regular kind of travel carriers for cats. They're probably going to be in there for at least 24 hours. And, there were actually about 4 days before cat owners were able to get into hotels with the Otis fire. But what we were able to do is provide really large collapsible dog crates that we normally think of as dog crates for cat owners. And then they were able to set up, a cat bed, a litter box, and a food and water spot, and in one enclosure where they were safe. So that was just kind of a something that I really wanted to be able to share with cat owners. We also found there's really neat expandable cat carriers. So again, you want to have your cats used to these, but they're carriers that have zip down sides, so you can have it smaller. So if you're going on an airplane or you're running away from a wildfire and you have a smaller carrier that is really accessible and easy to carry, but then both sides collapse out, still enclosed where you can put in a litter box and food and water. So kind of things to think about. And a lot of people were living in their cars for quite some time. So again, having some enclosures that, that help do that. Can you guys get Lily out? So thank you. And again, practice with your whole family about where you would go and what you would do, where you would meet, you know, and, you know, think about all sleeping in a tent together overnight in the backyard, and what you would need to make sure everybody's comfortable and happy. And in the event you have to leave them behind, and of course, you know, we saw this in Otis, you know, people had 12 horses and 18 sheep and, you know, ducks and rabbits and 5 cats and whatever, is the reality is sometimes you're not gonna be able to get everybody out. And the best thing to do if you have to leave them behind is to give them the best chance at survival. And really that's up to you about what that means. And with your own household, if you feel, you know, leaving a back door open or, you know, leaving gates open, what that would mean for your individual life. But, you know, even when we responded to Hurricane Katrina, we actually found dogs weeks later that were in crates on top of, that were, you know, put them in a carrying crate, put them on top of a table and left. So obviously, even miraculously, some of them survived. But, you know, leaving food and water behind, you know, all those sorts of things that if you have to go, do your best. And then, of course, contact anybody who is responsible for, you know, rescuing them, whether it be CERT teams or Sheriff's Office or any of the disaster response of how to get into your home and where to find them. So beyond kind of a individual level, I think really thinking as a community of what we need to do. After Katrina, the PETS Act was passed on a federal level. It's and planning act that means that if communities are only able to get FEMA reimbursement if they include pets in their disaster planning. So that is really a good impetus on everyone from the local, state, and national level to make sure that pets are included. And what they realize is that you can't help humans unless you help pets. And we're going to have humans, you know, not evacuating, and we're not going to be able to help everyone unless we make sure that they are included. Again, messaging is, you know, from anybody who's involved in any sort of disaster planning, what's going on, you know, at the animal shelter and emergency management is trying to get all of these messages out to people of being really prepared to be on your own in terms of these realistic expectations of what we're going to be able to do if we're in terms of the size of animal sheltering we're going to be able to do, where animal shelters are going to be located, and what resources are really needed to make sure that everybody is cared for in the short term and long term. I would love to see pet stashes of supplies stored alongside human supplies and have them in every different, you know, all the communities throughout, you know, even if they're going to be at fire stations or police stations or police or community centers or wherever we feel like people are going to go, having pet supplies stored along that in that way as well, I think will be incredibly helpful. We do have somewhat of a disaster plan, but to really ramp up and be able to help our community, I think there needs to be trained volunteers in each community, having something like animal response teams. Again, because, you know, even best case circumstances, you know, there's some, like we saw in Otis, you know, people running in the middle of the night over to Chinook Winds, you know, and it was great that they were able to open their doors to the community, but, you know, there's not going to be a stash of readily, you know, supplies right there at immediate time. So, and just knowing that also animals are fairly resilient, as long as they have water and a safe place to be, that they're going to be okay for a little bit until kind of resources can get there. And there are some great trainings. I know the CERT teams, I worked with a lot of different CERT teams throughout the county in terms of the animal handling and disaster response training, FEMA and Red Cross. So there are things that everybody can do, even just on your own to learn more about it. But I'm more than happy to lead any classes I'd love to be able to get kind of trained volunteers all throughout our county. In terms of post-disaster animal care. So if you're thinking over at Hatfield, people are going to be running up to the top of the roof, or if there'll be people going up to the community college, what's that really going to look like? And it'll be fairly chaotic. But I think, just as long as people try to stay calm, keep animals apart as much as possible. But you really have to think about, again, on an individual level, and it's going to be really different between the first 24 hours, what you're going to need in a week and what you're going to need in a month, in terms of what, what sort of planning and realistic response you're going to have. And just, doing your best to keep everybody healthy, keeping everything clean. That is kind of the best thing you can do for, trying to keep people and animals healthy and not kind of dirty water. And of course, like being as clean as possible during these times, cleaning food bowls, cleaning litter boxes, being creative if you need to in terms of, cats will pretty much adjust to sand or dirt for any sort of, if you want to have, kind of a litter box in cardboard or those sorts of things, but just being also creative with, ropes for leashes. And we do have a lot of different fencing that we can, I think, distribute throughout the county. And once we have our new animal shelter, when we don't know what that's going to be, and a lot of the disaster preparedness and care is part of that idea of what we will be building. And again, being able to stash a lot of these things, because we had to do kind of an emergency animal shelter at the fairgrounds, we were able to purchase lots of panels, and those are really great for pets and larger animals. So we have resources. We just want to make sure we can get them everywhere. And again, as much as people are going to be coming to evacuation sites with their pets, there's going to be a need for to have a lot of rescue and care for animals who are left behind. What we found, we were able to care for hundreds of animals up in the Otis area behind the evacuation zone or in the evacuation zone by sheltering in place. As much as we're going to be able to do that, that is going to be the best thing. As long as it's safe for the animals to be where they are, having them be in a location that they're used to, having them be in a place where owners can quickly find them if they're able to return home. That is going to be our number one priority. And the reality of us being able to, we have estimates of course, it's divided up by different locations, but within the county, there's about 10,000 dogs, about 12,000 cats, and probably close to, or, at least 1,000 horses. So to be 8 animal shelters for, even a quarter of those animals would just not be realistic. So we were very successful in our efforts. We cared for, hundreds of animals for close to 2 weeks. And the vast majority of animals were reunited with their people. So that was good. And I think something that we can emulate and try to continue to do in the future. Again, if there's an earthquake and tsunami, there's lots of other factors that are going to be coming into place. But in addition if we needed to take animals out, we did. So any animals who were obviously not where they needed to be, we were able to do emergency sheltering. We expanded our operations at the animal shelter, and we set up over at the fairgrounds. We had space for large animals, and of course, if there's widespread disaster, we of course always look over to the fairgrounds as a space where we could be. I think that will also be a place where a lot of other humans will want to go at this time in case of a large disaster. But again, with our new animal shelter, whenever that is, we hope to be in a place where we have lots of space, and we will be able to set up and be able to facilitate fairly large emergency shelter there. You guys will be close by, but if we're in between two bridges, if we end up building over by the airport where we think we're going to be, that kind of creates some different logistical challenges as well. But and we worked really closely with Salty Dog Hound Lounge up in Lincoln City, and I can imagine we'll continue to partner with them being kind of the Lincoln City spot. Yeah, so all that's in the works. There's always going to be, we call them SUVs in the animal care kind of disaster response. They're the spontaneous, untrained volunteers, and they're going to be there, and we love them, and people care very deeply about animals, and they're going to go out there and do things. So we want at least people who are interested and care about this. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna grab some water real fast. Hold on. Okay. To have a little bit of an idea of things to be concerned about and aware of. So, any unknown animal, you want to make sure that you approach them safely. And if you come across animals who you feel like are that do need to be reunited with their people, is to really make sure you check in with the appropriate place. And in Lincoln County, it would be with the animal shelter to at least report a found animal, hopefully get them scanned for a microchip. Of course, have pictures. We want to give everybody the best chance to be reunited with their people as much as possible. And again, going back to that, we talked about earlier is this idea that you would never leave your pets behind. Sometimes that just is the only option. And so we want to kind of reserve some of our judgment of people not deserving to have their animals back if they're not with their people during a disaster, because we just never know the whole story. And really, of course, we all know that there are kind of horror stories here and there, but in the vast majority of people care a lot about their animals, and they would do anything to get them back. And so that is our goal, is to always help facilitate and make that happen. And, kind of in terms of, we were able to kind of evacuate and transfer a lot of animals who we knew weren't owned, or at least also the animals that were in the shelter that we knew just needed new homes immediately in order to make more space. And what's great for us within kind of the whole Pacific Northwest is we have an amazing network of shelters who are there to help each other, depending on how large the disaster is, kind of what those evacuation or rescue transfer options might be for animals are unknown. And again, I would hope that as we, who the powers that be, which is beyond me, as they start, getting people out of the area, especially in a post-earthquake tsunami, that the animals would be included in those plans. And I don't know what all those plans are. I would hope that would be, and I think with the Pets Act, again, they've seen that if we're going to be taking people, we need to take their pets as well. So, but again, that helps, with evacuations or transferring, or if you're going to be moving with your pets, having those carriers, having the animals be as well socialized as possible, having those vaccination records, all of that is going to be incredibly important. So there's lots of resources of things to do, and ways to learn more about this. FEMA actually has a lot of trainings, and it's helpful just to know kind of the incident command system, because that is how all of these decisions and all of these responses kind of go through in disasters. So knowing the incident command system and how all of those things play together or work together is really important. But they have some really good trainings also on just community response for animals, individual preparedness, and just some animal handling, animal behavior type trainings as well. Ready.gov also has, great checklists of things to do to include in your Go kits, and some ideas of ways to kind of prepare on a family level, and then what to do, in case your pets get lost, or things to think about keeping your animals healthy kind of post-disaster. The CDC just expanded their website to include a lot of great information. So I think we've all been more involved with CDC lately than we had been before, but they have a lot of really great information. Red Cross talks about preparedness, but also they have some great first aid classes. They also have an app that you can put on your phone for just general pet first aid, which is great just in life, but just in a pinch, making sure that because again, we're going to be relying on just you're going to be your pet's person, and then just kind of the community response. And so as much as you're able to know that for your own pets, or you can help if you find an animal who's injured to be able to do some basic first aid, it would be incredibly helpful. And just a plug from Jenny with emergency management is making sure that you're all signed up with Lincoln Alerts. And that is the emergency system for knowing kind of what is going on in your community, or just especially, in your specific area about what emergencies may be headed your way. And just making sure that you also have your cell phone and your email address in that as well. They can also communicate with you on all sorts of things, like when vaccines might be ready for kind of the COVID response. But again, in those middle of the night things to be able to be aware of, signing up for Lincoln Alerts at the Sheriff's Office website. But just keep in mind too, a lot of cell towers came down, or didn't come down, but there wasn't access to cell coverage through Otis, during that night. And so having your emergency radio, having that AM FM radio is important. And, just all those, the radio communications, it's kind of thinking like, what would you do super old school? We didn't have all these things. Is this something to keep in mind? And then also on our website, lincolncountyanimalshelter.org, we have a disaster response kind of website where we try to compile a lot of this information. But of course, it's also where you can go to reach me if you're interested in doing any sort of kind of other presentations, or actually getting some hands-on care of animals, or seeing if there's a way that we can partner to be able to make sure that we get the resources and training out to the community. So if anybody has any questions or.
Thank you so very much. Tracy Cruz is going to join me. She's also on the Community Disaster Cash Planning Group. My internet is also a little unstable, so I lost, anybody put in questions, I might have lost them. But at this point, please put any questions that you might have into the chat. Tracy, did you see anything that I missed?
As far as the chat goes, I have not seen any questions yet. If you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will let you unmute yourself to ask the question.
Sounds good. And Laura, for me, are you working with volunteers right now during COVID? Just a question in general.
We're not. We have some of our kind of long-term volunteers that we are able to kind of. We're in different teams and all that right now. So right now we're not taking any new volunteers besides fosters. But if anybody's interested in having some critters at home to take care of, we will always. That's always great. But yeah, right now we're really limiting who's coming into the shelter.
That makes sense, and hopefully we'll get to the other side of that here relatively soon. Tracy, any questions?
I do see one. I'm thinking this is Strong or C Strong. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hang on, I need to allow that. Hang on just a second.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Craig, if you want to ask the question, go ahead.
Actually, Cheryl.
Oh, sorry, Cheryl.
That's okay. I was asking if the Hatfield building has a cache yet and if it will include pet stuff.
So the rooftop cache at Hatfield does have a cache supply, primarily set up for people, of course, but it does have some basic supplies for pets. It's not a lot yet, but I have puppy food for the number of pets that we think we might need to support for the 2 days for the 1,000 people that we expect upon the roof, worst case scenario, and some pet bags, disposal, and some leashes. But it is just the start. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why I was excited to hear Laura's talk today.
Thanks.
Mo has a question.
So Mo, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, it's me. It's Cynthia with it's not Moritz. Sorry. We went to a trip last year, and we had an indoor only cat, and we were trying to find a hotel to stay with her only one night, and I found that these pet-friendly hotels actually mean only dog-friendly hotels. So, and then I started getting worried because what we would do in an emergency situation, like. There is no, like most places don't accept cats. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Laura, can you address or have any suggestions for how people find cat-friendly hotels in the area as well? Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, in disasters, actually a lot of hotels do kind of lessen the restrictions. They loosen their restrictions for what animals they will allow. And even a lot of normally non-pet friendly hotels will allow dogs or, and those sorts of things. I think that, it is a good idea to kind of have, to do a little bit of research ahead of time. And I think, locally, the hotels did allow cats as well when Red Cross kind of set them up with kind of temporary housing. But I think it really helps, again, just, and just maybe in general too, of just when you're communicating with hotels, of letting them know that, if you have a very large enclosure that you have for your cats, and so they're not allowed to roam throughout the entire room, I think that helps hotels and other people feel more comfortable allowing cats in those situations. And actually, your cat would probably be much happier just having their own safe little space during those times. So I think a lot of that, just like with landlords and all those things, is just communicating what you've done to make sure that your pet is kind of well behaved and not going to be destructive. But that would be my advice.
Perfect. Those are good suggestions. Go ahead. Anybody have questions? And just wanted to let other folks know to kind of add on to the original question that Cheryl asked. The Safe Haven Hill cache also has basic supplies for pets. Again, it's limited. We have dog food and leashes and pet bags up there as well. We are just starting to develop that supplies up at the community college, and with any hope, depending on how the relationship works with the shelter, we might have them closer at hand up there, so that we can work in partnership with that group.
Yeah. No, I think that would be great.
And we have one more question. I'm not sure if it's Jill or Al, but do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question about?
And
yeah, we moved here from the Midwest with our dog. And do we need to update the chip in her neck or to reflect different address, phone numbers, that sort of thing?
Yeah, you do. So I don't know if you have that information from when she was microchipped. So it has the microchip number and the company to call. That's the best thing to do. Probably like me, I would have no idea where I put that piece of paper once they got microchipped. So if you don't know that information, you can go to your vet. Or next time you're at your vet, you can ask them to scan it, or just call us over at the animal shelter. We're doing kind of everything a little bit by appointment, but we could do something even the same day. If you just give us a call and let us know that you need to update your microchip information, we'll just come out with the scanner and find out what your microchip number is and help you figure out what that company is and who to contact to make sure that's up to date.
That's wonderful. Thank you for offering that service. That it would
and we also we offer microchips for $20, and that includes lifetime registration and being able to update it at no charge. So if you have pets and want to have them microchipped, again, just give us a call for an appointment and we can make sure that we can get that done for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wow, that is super awesome and super cheap, Laura.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, but if you have questions, you can reach out to Laura directly. If you need to see something that you missed on today's presentation, like I said, it'll be on Hatfield's past seminar page in a couple of days. And other than that, thank you so much, everyone, for being interested in learning how to take care of your pets and to be thinking about that as you're thinking about how to take care of yourself and your family. We appreciate you joining us today. And Laura, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It was great chatting with everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate your backup. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation. Thanks, everyone.